we've ended the year in a really, really different place from where we started it for a whole bunch of reasons that long-term followers of the company will be very familiar with. But I'm actually really proud of the fact that the company has come through this turbulent period and has actually come out, I think, a stronger business than it went in. And we've still got some work to do to convince people of that. But I think we're a very, very highly credentialed team. And one of the things I'm most proud of is the colleagues that have come on board over the past few months. We've got a really strong asset now in HMBD-002, and as we've discussed in the past, this was the product of just an exhaustive search in the early part of the year. But again, I'm really proud that we've got a great drug now to take forward. And I'm really proud of the way that the company has transformed around this. You know, in a very short space of time, we've brought this drug into our custody, so to speak. We've developed some really, really innovative plans for how to take it forward. And I think it leaves us in a great position now heading into 2026. So it's been a transformative year, in many ways a challenging year, but I think actually a year that set the company up for a bright future in the new year. It would be the data readout that we shared in October from our phase 1 clinical trial. And when we brought in HMBD-002 in the middle part of the year, this trial was not yet complete. We'd seen bits of the data, but we saw the final data in its finished form in October. And two things really stood out. One is that we've got, in my view, one of the safest cancer drugs I've ever worked on. You know, most cancer drugs are limited to some extent by toxicity. This drug is extremely well tolerated, and that just opens up all kinds of possibilities that we often don't have with cancer drugs. But the other thing that really caught my eye is we're seeing patients benefiting in the phase 1 study, which you often don't do. You often really just don't get much glimpse of efficacy in phase 1. We did with this drug. We can see evidence that it's moving the needle for patients, and that's exciting. That's a good place to be when you come out of a phase 1 trial for a drug. So, you know, I'm a long-term drug developer. I'm a physician by training. I've been doing this for 20 years. Data is what interests me, and we had some great data in October, and I think again it just puts us in a great position for next year. Well, as at the end of the third quarter, which of course is our most recent financial statements, we had $5.7 million in the bank. We'll be due to get an R&D tax rebate, of course, next year, as we always do. So you can sort of implicitly add a bit onto that. As per our last financial statements, that's at least 4 quarters of cash. So we're in good shape. We will probably at some stage need a little bit more, candidly, to do some of the clinical work, but we've designed it in such a way that we don't need a lot and we don't need it soon. So VISTA is actually quite a new target. It's been around for about 13, 14 years. And there have been other companies trying to hit this target. But as we've touched on a little bit, a lot of them have fallen over with the safety hurdle. A lot of them have failed to demonstrate safety for their drugs. And that's actually really thinned the field. There's at least 3 or 4 drugs from big companies like Janssen, part of Johnson & Johnson, that have not cleared that. And then, in fact, just in the last couple of weeks, a company in the United States that I would say was, in a way, our closest competitor, a company called Sensei Bio, announced that they'd run out of money and they weren't able to take their drug forward. So we're actually right out in front now, although this was, in some ways, a more crowded field even just 6 months ago when we brought the drug in. We're really now sitting on the most advanced VISTA inhibitor in the global clinical pipeline. Now, obviously, there are other drugs looking at this broad space of immuno-oncology, including a number of them on ASX, but nobody who's really doing quite what we're doing and is as advanced as we are. So we've ended up, I think, in a really good position. We are probably the most advanced VISTA company in the world right now. And that's a good head start for the work we're planning to do. Look, I think there's actually some truth in that to a certain extent, and I don't mean by that to deprecate HMBD-002 in a sense. I think it's a very, very promising drug, and we're really excited to take it forward. But I think we've been clear that in the medium to long term, we'd like to have other things in the company's portfolio as well. I think last year the company learned a tough lesson about having all your eggs in one basket, about the binary risk associated with just one drug in the portfolio. And one of the great things about 002 is it has these multiple applications. It has many different cancers it could be used in. But I think it would probably behoove us in the medium to long term to have some diversification, have something else in the company's portfolio. No rush, because we've got a pretty full plate at the moment with 002, and I think we need to really get some runs on the board with that asset. But I do think within perhaps this time next year, and if not the year after, I'd love to see the company with a couple of other things going on, and 002 proudly at the centerpiece of that, but other things in the company's pipeline too. If there's been one frustration in all this, it is that I think the work that the company is now doing, the prospects the company now enjoys, are not yet reflected in the share price. And we're really sensitive to the fact that our responsibility is ultimately to our shareholders, and is to drive the value of their investment in the company. And that's been a little bit slower to respond than I would have liked, and frankly than I would have expected. And there's some reasons for that. It's not a mystery, but I think that's perhaps been a little bit the frustration during the second half of the year. You'll never find a public company CEO that tells you their company is overvalued, but I think you could make a pretty strong case for our company that it's a little undervalued at the moment. And that's something we'll be working on really hard in the new year. I think just sometimes when a company goes through as much transformation as our company has, it takes a little while for it to sink in and for people to get used to it. And that will come. Well, we're going to be focused on getting our phase 2 trial up and running. That's the key task for the company now, is getting this very promising drug back into the clinic. And we may or may not get first patient in the first half. That might be just pushing it a little bit. But what we will be able to share with people is all the many, what I call waypoints along the journey there. So as we're getting ethics approvals and regulatory approvals, as we're appointing contract research organizations, as we get drug delivered from the manufacturer, all those things are important and value-driving points for investors, where they can see, look, this is real. This isn't just something the company's talking about. This isn't just a fantasy. They're actually doing this. It's moving forward. The train is picking up speed. And that's usually very, very meaningful for investors. So we'll be trying to give people as much visibility to that as we can over the first half, saying, look, here's the progress we're making. Here's what comes next. Here's what we've done so far. And I think that will really help to build some excitement and some well-deserved excitement around this program.